Hi, morning guys. How are you doing? Everybody's here already. Hi. Hi everyone. So today, unfortunately, AC3 couldn't make it, so I already had taken her out of the lineup, and unfortunately, IC is experiencing some electrical difficulties, as in she has no electricity right now. So that makes it hard to be on the internet. So we are joined and blessed to have her today. We're going to be joined by Empress, one of my favorite people. So let's go to Empress. Oh. GM's Empress, how are you?
Good morning. I'm awake. I'm here. I'm
Yeah.
excited to talk to you though. So
Yeah. Empress is on the West Coast, so very grateful that she woke up super early for us today. But just to tell you a little bit about Empress, or what I know about Empress, is she is one of my favorite people on the timeline. Um, I met her in Bunny Space, I believe, and you know, just bonded with her instantly. And I honestly, like, if Empress is following you on Twitter, you are an insta follow for me because I regard her so highly. She's awesome. She's hilarious. And yeah, and she's part of our creator ecosystem. So I wanted to introduce you guys to her. So, GMs, how are you doing? Tell us, Empress, about like give us the Empress lore right now. Like, what's your background?
um that's well, you know what I wanted to say real quick. I remember the day I met you because I clapped back at Bunny because he didn't call on you.
Oh, he never calls on me. And then Malik will be like, no, 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 let's go to Manny. Let's go to this person. Yeah, I get no respect in that space. But I've started George doesn't come very often anymore. So I've started being George and just unmuting myself as fast as possible and talking over people. I've become that person.
That's what you got to do, a woman in this
Yeah, you
space.
gotta fight. You gotta fight for your right to party in that space. I swear.
Yeah. I guess that kind of goes back to so I kind of liken the space as what I used to do for work, which is I used to work with juvenile delinquents. So when I'm co-hosting Degens, I find a lot of those skills carry over, especially Degen hours when people come in altered in various states. So I think that's why I'm more effective kind of on the host front. I also have been doing spaces since beta. I was on quote unquote the normie side of Twitter, and
Oh,
I got altered one night and wandered into a space that was an NFT space, and I won a rap battle. So I got my first NFT. That's how I got my first
wait.
NFT.
So you've got bars, Empress? Are we gonna get
Not
a
at
rap today?
all. Not at all. I'm kind of, my theory is, no offense to anybody, that it was one of the first times a girl had been in an NFT space in a long time. So they just pitied me and were like, listen to this white girl who can't rap at all. Let's give her an NFT. So yeah, no, definitely don't have bars.
Yeah, I mean, being a girl in an NFT space has its what's it? Its pros
Perks,
for
yep,
sure.
pros and cons.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah. You
but I've
get
also,
called bro a lot.
I do.
That's a con for me. No, actually, I'm fine with bro nowadays because I've gotten used to it. It's kind of like, yeah, whatever. It's man. I got called sir and man this week, and I was like, not sure I like those.
I don't understand the lack of ability to discern what is typically a feminine name versus a masculine name. There's some disconnect there that I don't quite get.
Yeah.
The number of people who have been like, "Okay, okay, sir, okay." Somebody called me daddy one time, but that was a whole other thing. I don't even know what that was about.
Mm,
So just
mm. Although, we had Melty on the channel recently, and she was like, Pachara, of formerly of Primordian. She's like, she really gets into like the community calling her mommy, which I don't know. I feel it kind of makes my skin crawl, but But Melty was like, nah, I don't go for mommy, but maybe everybody could call me daddy. And so she really works with the daddy, being called daddy. So
I
whenever
don't
she
yuck
comes in,
anyone's yum. I don't yuck anyone's yum. To each their own.
exactly. When she comes into the Discord, I'm always like, daddy's home. But
Yeah.
yeah, continue. Sorry, I rudely interrupted.
No, no, you're fine. I think it's hard. I was never, so I'm in Portland.
Yeah,
I've never had the unfortunate experience that a lot of women have had. I never even really believed kind of that it was harder for women because it's just more liberal here, you know. I didn't confront that ever. Web3 it can be a really toxic space for women. It can be really, really difficult to make your way, do your thing. It's a lot, mostly women being toxic toward other women, like a lot.
we talked about this last week. Yes,
Yeah, yeah.
there's a
It's just
lot of woman on woman violence. It's crazy.
there is. There's a lot of backbiting. There's a lot of disrespect. There's the quote unquote credible women judging the sex workers. There's the sex workers judging the credible women. There's the low key sex workers presenting like they're not. Like it's really a complicated ecosystem, and it's
Very.
not a lot of raising each other up. Meanwhile, what's funny is for me, it's the opposite. I like the diversity. I have a lot of sex worker friends. I have a lot of friends from other cultures, other ideas, things like that, because that's how you grow, right?
Yeah.
That's how you learn to cater to the masses. Like if your goal is to be a creator and everything else, then you should be able to speak to anybody in the audience. Otherwise, how do you pull them all in? So I don't understand the woman on woman violence. I don't understand the alienation of anybody. I don't really get that. I mean, that said, you also know I'm quick to cancel a motherfucker, like if
Oh
they go
yeah,
too far.
you're quick to put some verbal hands on somebody, kind of like me. Like, I mean, people kind of gravitate to my space because it's like, the first thing was you're so wholesome. I wasn't wholesome necessarily. Like maybe I was holding back a little bit, but I just welcomed everyone because like I have a bunch of sex worker friends. I have a bunch of every kind of friend at this point in my life. So, I just welcomed everybody. There are only two rules in Solana Side Up. That's no hate speech and don't fuck with my Jumbotron.
Those are good rules, though. Those are good
Exactly.
rules.
Have you seen the filth that people put on the Jumbotron? I don't want it.
Absolutely.
I don't want it. But
You gotta get
yeah.
that clout. You gotta get that clout where like so we there's a notorious troll, Snowfall. He puts scat porn up in people's jumbotron.
Okay,
But
I'm looking out for him.
yeah, do look out for him. But believe it or not, he only did that once to me because I course corrected that motherfucker real quick. But I also talked to him with respect. And now he comes to my spaces and he joins the conversation and he really
Yeah.
enjoys it. So
Yeah.
it's like you got to be careful with how you navigate those trolls because you
Yeah.
can make them allies. You can
Yeah.
actually do that.
Absolutely. I have made a couple of them. He's not in the space anymore. But there was a guy who was super unhinged, and everybody else, like he would drive everybody else crazy. And I talked to him one night, and I was like, "Look, you got to understand, this is a conversation. The way a conversation works is you speak, everybody lets you speak, and then I speak, and everybody lets me speak." He never interrupted me again. Never.
Mhm.
In fact, he would be like, "Shh, V speaking to people." So, like, yeah, you just got to find a way to connect with people for sure.
Yeah, and it's definitely in this space, you definitely A have to demand respect, but B you absolutely have to give what you expect to get. Like there's a lot of lacking accountability in this space. And I think that's where I come off to certain people as either scary or intimidating or a bitch or whatever else. But like people can go to my timeline and they'll see like I'm human too. I've fucked up. I've had to apologize. I've had to take accountability. I literally went after some guy that I like misunderstood why he didn't follow me, called him out on the timeline. he got back, and it was a petty back and forth because I thought he was using me to get on stage. It's not because I'm out here correcting motherfuckers for not following me, but he apparently like misclicked a thing or whatever, and right there on the timeline left what I wrote, didn't dirty delete, and said, "Hey, I'm sorry, I was wrong. That I should not have come at you." Like there's a lot of dirty deleting that happens, and not a lot of accountability, and not a lot of people willing to say, "I'm sorry," which I don't understand, right? Like, how do we foster humanity? How do people learn and grow if we can't be like, "Oh man, I really fucked up there," and like then we become a cautionary tale for the next person? That's not a bad thing, right?
It's not a bad thing. No, I agree. Let's talk about, there's so many things I want to talk about now, Empress. Let's talk about dirty deleting for a second, because I agree with you. Like, I had a interaction with a girl that I really respect on the timeline, but I either completely misread her or misread the vibe or what. But like, I thought that I don't know. I thought that she was saying something that she was absolutely not. So she's like, yo, what's happening? So I went back and I read it, and I was like, oh, okay, there's like one word difference from what I had in my head that would have changed the whole vibe or the whole meaning of it. So I wrote at the bottom, I'm sorry, I misunderstood, and I'm leaving this up so other people can see that people can have differences and come to an agreement, or can have misunderstandings and come to an agreement, and that's okay. And we talked more in the DMs about it because I just wanted to like come correct with her. But like, yeah, I think the dirty deleting in this space is outrageous. Like, just disappearing scenarios that happened. And the thing is that people's memories are short, but they're also long. And I know of one instance in particular where somebody posted something, people called them out on that something, they disappeared for a week, came back, and people still to this day post about it. Like, you did this dirty thing, and that person still hides those comments. And it's like, why didn't you just apologize? Like, we're all human. We all say some thoughtless shit sometimes. Wouldn't apologizing have been much easier? Like, because there are people who are just not letting it go. So you're going to be dirty deleting and hiding for the rest of your time.
Well, I mean, I think that there's also there has to be an acknowledgement that there are bad faith actors in the space. I think there's a lot of personality disorders untreated in the space. A lot of people think they can get treatment on Twitter, which is just like next level. I don't even know. But kind of back to what I was saying about the difference between being a woman in the space too. A lot of people don't know this. Somebody leaked my revenge porn. Like, I was dating a guy, and all of that went out, and it was mortifying. It was the one time I saw crypto Twitter do a good thing, though, because he's gone. Like, everybody was like, "Oh hell no, like you don't do that." But like at the same time, my full everything docs was out there, and it was a lot, and it was a lot to bounce back from, especially because what I didn't want was, I didn't want the credibility and the reputation that I had built up so much to suddenly get an influx of followers because of these pictures and things like that. That was the opposite of what I was building my account on. So I locked my account down. The pictures got taken off. I think I only gained like 500 followers, and it's not because I'm not pretty. Like, it's like a lot of people think but no, that's not what I wanted. So that was difficult to navigate that, because and no offense to our fellow sex worker friends or whatever, but we know that women who use their real photos, right, they have more followers. Like, it's easier for them. It comes quicker. It's what they are. But they also get a lot of DMs that are like, "I'll spend $500 to do this," or they get unsolicited. Do you know what freaks me out the most? Unsolicited selfies. Like, other people worry about dick pics, but when I open my thing and I see NFTs all day, and then all of a sudden there's a guy's face, bam, that I had no idea who that was or why, I'm like, whoa.
I guess I don't get a lot of any of that. I don't know. Like, I mean, also, I'm older, so and I have a
Well,
little
I am too, but so I'm 40, but again, my nudes got leaked. So it kind of changed the tide of what I ended up
yeah,
getting
yeah,
in my thing. But I got over it.
yeah,
Like I saw the look of surprise on your face, and so that tells me that I got over it, right, though, because I'm not known as the woman who got her nudes leaked, right? Like,
yeah,
I've
yeah.
distanced myself from
I
that entire
absolutely,
thing.
I A, didn't know it, and B, like, I would have been one of those people like, take the shit down right now. Like, are you insane? Um, wow, that's a crazy experience to have.
It
Um,
was, and I think a lot of people would have packed up shop and gone from there, you know? But I again, also, like you said, you're older. I'm older, and it's
yeah.
like I've had a kid, and it's it's kinda like so because I have a 15-year-old son, right?
Hmm.
And it's just kinda like once you've had a child, like, you don't get as freaked out by nudity anyways, so it was
Yeah,
kinda like, you know, and compared to what a lot of people have all over the internet, I think the most damaging part was that it wasn't, voluntary, you know? Like,
yeah. No,
no
there's a lot.
shame in my game. I liked my photos. No, I wouldn't have sent them if I didn't like them. But
Yeah.
I didn't want them out there. You know.
Yeah, no, it's a consent thing. Like,
Yeah,
consent
exactly.
consent spans a whole plethora of things that people don't think about. It's like I once was in the line for a concert and a guy touched my hair and I turned to him and I was like, "What are you doing?" Like I didn't know him. I didn't even say hi to him before he touched my hair. And I was like, "What are you doing?" And I was with a friend and my friend looked at him like, "What are you doing?" And he was like, "Well, I don't have hair like this and it's just so pretty. I wanted to touch it." And I was like, "Yo, what? No." That's
Yeah.
like the equivalent of like especially without asking, that's like the equivalent of touching my boob. Like, no, you don't do that. He didn't get it. But consent spans a whole plethora of things that are non-sexual and sexual that people really, and I think it also just not completely related to your incident, but I think that people need to read the room. And because of, like you said, so many, what was it? I don't want to use mental illnesses, but
Mental health issues.
mental health issues. People don't have that discernment or that capability of reading the room like they need to sometimes. Like even if you know the person, like there's some days when I jump into our Discord, and I love everybody. I love our community. They're so cool, but there's some days where I am just not feeling it, and Reaper can attest. Like he's come at like we usually go at it all day and we have a really good time. And there was one day where I was like, I literally had to go into his DMs and say, I need you to give me a few days break, a few days grace, because I'm just like not where I usually am. And he could respect it. But then there are people who you will say that to who just will be like, nah, this is who you are, and keep going. So there's a lot of like, I mean, yeah, discernment that doesn't take place in our space because of like the immaturity or the mental health issues on top of just assholes.
Yeah. Well, and I think the kind of the reason I brought up the revenge porn piece is that's when it really started to strike me that the women are like it's the harshest playground, quote unquote, that I've experienced as a woman. No matter what, like just making your way to get credibility, and it's kind of where my content, I guess if you could say that. So technically I don't even identify as a creator. I like to say I'm a networker. I am about the people. I'd rather help people get seen than be seen necessarily. I do a lot of consulting behind closed doors for a lot of big projects because you know that expression, those who can't do teach. So
Yeah.
while I may have some impulse control problems, I'm really good at optics for other people. But I've also learned to parry my influence. Well, I hate that word, but my impulse, that's the word I meant, control problems into an asset because I've become a pit bull too for a lot of projects. So while I'm behind closed doors saying, you're the founder, you can't be tweeting that. I need you to open up a can of Act Right. You're not going to get emotional, whatever else. At the same time, I can say, but guess what? I can. I can go after this motherfucker. I can make this tweet. And so there are projects, like I said, people don't even realize that I'm affiliated with, that I am in these chats, and I'm literally actually coordinating some of the attacks that I'm going for because these are bad faith actors. Like I'm watching them do things. I'm watching founders get hurt, wanting to pull out of the space. I'm watching founders be human and want to have a voice and say, stop attacking me. But like then they look weak, right? We're a vicious community of degens in general, right? We see a founder come out who has any kind of complaint, and we're all over that motherfucker because he's got our money. He doesn't have a right to complain, whatever. But again, like this is still a human being. So when they get fucked over, they should have somebody who's a voice. And so I really have lately been likening myself to a pit bull, and I've been and almost like a fixer. I got no DMs of somebody the other day who was claiming they hadn't been paid, whatever else. And I was like, no, bro, like I was there. I brokered that deal. You literally have to sign the NDA. You haven't signed the NDA. The minute you sign the NDA, that gets released. And you agreed 2 weeks ago to sign the NDA. So it's not a bullying thing where we were like, boom, you have to sign this. You're not getting paid. So I've been doing a lot of that. But a lot of the other content that has come out, the red flag tweets, things like that, believe it or not, a lot of those aren't subtweets directed at people in the space. Probably a lot of them are, but some of them like are, you're a serial killer if you don't like the cold side of your pillow, you know? Like some of them are just funny, silly things. Some of them are very pointed. But there's a great expression in the motherfucker community, which I really pretty much have alienated half of them because I don't like some of the shit that they do. But it says, if you come for a motherfucker, you best not miss. And the problem is when people come for me, they forget that it's Twitter. It's literally a text platform. Receipts are a fucking fact. And like, again, if I'm wrong, I'll say I'm sorry and accountability. 9 times out of 10 of the certain people that are going to come for me directly up front, that's somebody that I've blown their spot up already. That's not somebody that I've had a conversation in DMs. That's somebody who fucked around and found out. A bad faith actor, in my opinion. And it's interesting because a lot of OGs used to label me drama, used to label me problematic, used to stay away from me. And if I had a quarter for every DM I got months after the fact where they said, you warned me about this person, I should have known about this person, you were right about this person, I wouldn't have to work in crypto Twitter another day ever again, because it happens probably once a day. Somebody will get into my DMs, people who have verbally eviscerated me in DMs, who have literally, there's one notorious space host. I told everybody day 2 of meeting him, this guy is a fucking problem. That was a year ago. Literally 3 days ago, I got a DM from somebody who had called me the worst names in the world and said, you were 100% right. I am 100% sorry. Like when you work with juvenile delinquents, when you've done parent education, when you have a degree in early childhood development and child and family studies, your intuition is better. Plus, as you said, the epiphany, we're old, 40 years, narcissistic abuse, all the things. You run the gamut of people that you've encountered, borderline personality disorder. It's just easier to tell. And that's just an advantage that I think women have to offer.
Yeah. For 46 years on the planet, I've lived in 4 or 5 different countries or parts of the country, if not countries, which, I mean, to me, like the United States is farcical in that like every part of it's so wildly different that it might as well be its own country. But especially north to south. Yeah, I mean, you can just tell some things like but even in like, I guess funny like anecdote about me is even in my 20s, people, God, you're like my grandma. Reaper, you say the sweetest things. Heart. Anyway, so um, when I was in my 20s, people used to, girls in particular, used to always come up to me and go, "Hey, can you check this guy out for me?" And it wasn't because like they wanted my approval or anything. They wanted me to tell them if I thought that the person liked men or women. And like it was crazy because there were a bunch of people, like I'd be like, you don't want to date him, he's not into women. And she's like, but he's married. Why she wanted to date a married man is completely irrelevant, but I was like, you don't want to date him, he doesn't like women. And she's like, but he's married and this and this. 6 years later, he was not married and he was not dating women anymore.
Mm-hmm.
So you can, they're just things that you got. I got exceptional gaydar. Um, I was blessed with it. It's not very helpful to me now, but it was when I lived in New York. Very helpful. Anyways, that was a weird turn. So okay, so in terms of you not considering yourself a creator, which I kind of don't either, but then, Vittler, when I joined Decoders, was like, I mean, I guess I was always hosting a space before that, but again, I felt very much like you, like a networker, like connecting people. Like my space is kind of like a public service, like drive time radio of Web3. We don't, I don't, especially since the market's down, I don't really talk about NFTs very often. I don't offer market I don't offer technical analysis or any market analysis. I mean, if it comes up, great, because yeah, we do identify as a Web3 space, but it's kind of more of a place that my Web3 community can come in and be like, I'm having a hard day, or just uh, or just talk about some other shit, but still be a Web3 community. Like we had a huge, one of our best days was talking about different people's voices and like what attracts you to a voice. And then another bomb day was we talked about fetishes for an hour. And it was like, and it kind of got everybody out of that kind of glum, because it's called Solana Side Up. So, I want people to leave feeling good. So, it kind of got everybody out of their down bad state of mind for an hour and back out into life and reality with a better outlook. So yeah, I don't consider myself a creator, even though I have a space and even though now I'm on YT. But that was kind of uh, Vittler was like, "You should do this," and I was like, "I'll try it. I'll try it a couple times." And now apparently it's a thing. I do it all the time, but I still very much feel like you. But when was the moment, I guess, that you felt that it was like, oh, or maybe it's just the moment that the first person called you a creator, but you thought like, this is a thing, this is my thing, this is my new thing. When, talk about like when you kind of realized that.
I think so. To be frank, irritatingly enough, what I often have been called is an influencer, and it literally says in my bio hashtag not your influencer, because I feel like with influencer it becomes accountability that I don't want at all. And I also think that it's really self-grandiose, the people running around calling themselves an influencer. I think that I have a really good core group of OGs that have been from me from the start, and these are the best kind of friends. These are friends that I have had massive fights with, who have questioned the things that I have done, who have told me whatever. But very early on, one of the young men, who he used to host the I don't know if you've caught this, but I don't host spaces. I will co-host any space, and I love that, but I
Yeah.
don't host spaces.
Yeah.
I find that the anxiety of if people don't show up is a lot, but also, believe it or not having somebody on my right side, and being in that lone corner does something to my psyche. I'm a very strange person, I recognize that, but I'm also big on the predator prey thing, and it's not my thing. Anyway, he
I
told
get
me
it.
he
I
told
was a
me
co-host for 6 months before I ever hosted anything myself. And the anxiety of people not showing up, I've gotten over that weirdly. It's still like, it's still a weird thought in my head every day, but it's kind of like, well, if they don't show up, I'm going back to bed. Win-win. Because my
Yeah.
space is so early. But yeah, no, there's so much security in being a co-host versus a host, to be honest with you. Um you don't have to do anything if you don't want to, but then if you do things, like, you're supporting the host in a way that's like invaluable.
Yeah, and so my friend will tell you, he would open the space and then he would go to work or he would fall asleep, and I would run it. And the thing that's weird is I believe Twitter can be traumatic. I did used to host my own spaces on the normie side of Twitter. I would have large spaces. Ran into a lot of not well people. Had pictures taken in my back porch. So there's a whole lot of stuff that goes on in my head about that. But this guy, this young guy who would open his thing, he would say to me all the time, he said, "You can pretend you're not a creator, and I'll keep opening these spaces and I'll get the clout for hosting them or whatever else. But you are a creator." And this is back when I had 1,000 followers, whatever. He's like, "You are a creator. You are going to do things in this space. And I'm going to sit back and I'm going to tell you I told you so." And he there every week. "Hey, good morning, Empress. I told you so. Good morning, Empress. I told you so." So I think that that's when somebody first identified me as a creator. I continue to push back on both of those labels, like I said, influencer and creator, because I really think networking is more my corner of the world. But part of networking, like you said, people coming into your space, content creation is networking, right? If you're doing it right, then you're bringing in all the different people, like I said. And so then that creates the conversation, that creates the dialogue. That's why I like doing some time in the political spaces. I love being the dissenting opinion. I love taking on all the people, whatever else. I got a really bad name being affiliated with Mice Media, who since I've had to walk away from because they went extra crazy on the one side. But I loved being the leftist in the room and advocating for everything that is the opposite of what they believe in. So I like that intellectual stimulation. And I guess that's content in and of itself. So yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I guess in its loosest form, content creation is creating something out of nothing, right? Like every day I open a space, I create that space out of thin air. Like, I create whatever we start talking about, or, and attracting people, a certain kind of people to your space is also creating, like, for example, Salon Side Up is never going to be a sponsored space. I announced that like 3 months after I started, because I just didn't want the vibe to change or the integrity to change. That in itself is creating a cornerstone to my content, that nobody's ever going to have to feel like they have to buy something in that space, or feel like I'm pushing anything on them, you know? So I guess that's worth knowing. But okay, so let's talk about like what are the, and we've already talked about quite a few of them, but what are like some of the challenges that you faced in the creator experience per se? I don't know how we can top the one you've already shared with us, but I'm sure there are other more nuanced ones.
I think the biggest challenge that I have faced, and it doesn't get better, and so that's why I would say this is the biggest, even bigger than the revenge porn or whatever, is as a woman, and to anybody who thinks that women aren't, literally do this experiment. We have to justify everything all the time. Like, we go into a space and we say something that any male would say, even if it's me pissed off, unhinged, popping off on somebody. All the bros are like, "Yeah, buddy, we get it." Punch a guy in the arm, be like, "Oh, yeah, I understand. They're a dick, whatever." It's a confrontation. I go in there and it's, Empress is being a bitch again. She's emotional, da 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 da. You know, like it is constant. And then it's like, well, what do you mean? Why do you feel that way? Well, how do you know they didn't do this? Well, how do you know? And it's like, first off, if a guy says it, like, y'all don't even care that much. You take him at face value. It's not a fucking Spanish Inquisition, whatever. But if a woman says it, it's literally like this weird third degree. And this is even with alpha calls. So I happen, more than anything, I identify as a degen, because when I identify as a degen, people recognize I'm not responsible for their bags. I do whatever the fuck I want, and if I make money, I make money. And I believe in quote unquote ethical trading. So if I make a call, I make a call when I get in. If I'm flipping like Nakamigos, I was making bags on Nakamigos, but the entire time I was telling everybody I am making bags. Like, they could have flipped too. Everybody could have been doing exactly what I was doing. This was not low key in the background. This is, I bought a hoodie at 0.05. I just flipped that fucker for 4 ETH. Like, yeah, literally telling people these things. But
I need to
as
follow more
I
Empress calls. Jeez.
well, that's the thing. But even now, so in some of my chats, I'll drop the call and I'm like, NFA, probably nothing, whatever else. And not in the cute way that people do in Web3, probably nothing, but like, no, literally, like, probably don't do it. And I'm a single mom. So my like degenning into a shitcoin is like 0.02. Okay. So if I make a call, like, I'm literally 0.02 invested. And these people will literally say, well, what do you mean? Well, where did you get this from? Well, who did you get this from? And then, like, I'll watch the next person drop something and they're like, oh, I'm aping in, I'm aping in. And so then I'll withhold information, right? Because, like, it's exhausting. Like, I have a specialization in minority studies. I've burned dumpsters. I've done the thing. I've learned a lot about what emotional labor looks like, and how intense that is, and how it's hard for, like, to do that all the time. And women do that too, right? Like, we spend a lot of fucking time explaining ourselves. So I think that that's the biggest challenge. Like I said, because it never stops. Like, here I am with these OGs that I have won countless arguments, that they have literally apologized to me a million times, and they turn around. They literally, okay, so the Pepe dumped, right? I
Mm-hmm.
literally said, y'all, I know all the people behind there, wrote a whole thread about one of them calling the bad faith motherfucker out. Y'all stayed in it. It's basically the equivalent of the midcoin baddie that did jugs, but it's in Pepe. And literally, that person is now in Mog. Get out of Mog, because they were all in Mog. And they're like, oh no, it's going to the moon, going to the moon. I said, now's the time. All the Pepe people are coming to Mog. Get your bags, get out. Yesterday, we should have listened. I'm so sorry. The same people who haven't listened to me for over a year. And
Yep.
so that's by far my biggest challenge. It's
Yeah.
frustrating.
Yeah. You're right. You're right. You're right. I remember one of the first spaces I ever got to speak on, like big spaces. Um, it was like probably May of last year. Um, there was a guy, a D god, who was not well liked, but got on speaker panels a lot. I guess as the kind of dissenting opinion kind of thing. But he was young and cocky and all these things. And somehow I got into a discussion with him, and I just said, I don't, well, apart from the fact that I'm priced out of D gods, I just don't think it's for me, you know. And he's like, why? And I was like, and I ended up getting into the conversation where I'm justifying my decision not to spend money on D gods. But I said, well, I think it's very brocentric, and I just, I'm a chick, so I don't necessarily want to hang out in that kind of space right now. And he's like, we have the D goddesses, and he just went on this whole rant. And in the end, I was like, yeah, okay, but like, I just personally don't want to be a part of something so brocentric. And and somebody else finally stepped in, because I was like, I was done. I was like, this is my final word on this. Like, I don't need to justify my decision to you, although he kind of baited me into doing it quite a bit. And a guy stepped in, and said, I'll tell you what, my guy, if we call each other sis all week and we feel comfortable with it, then we can revisit this chat, and you can have her justify some more. Boys don't like being called sis very much, just so you know. Like we went into a couple chats and did it, and it didn't really hit the way bro does. Okay, and on the other side though, Empress, like that's definitely the challenge, and that's definitely the challenge for women. Um, but what is like the most fulfilling thing about being in your position, on CT, on in Web3, as a creator or as a networker, whatever?
Oh, that's hard to pick. I mean, like, let's be real. There's absolutely satisfaction in being right? Like, that's one of the most
100%.
satisfying thing ever, especially when you're a woman who's fought so hard to be taken seriously. So, like, there's that. And so that kind of also parries into the satisfaction of gaining people's respect and doing it in an authentic way. It's validating, and it's kind of like, okay, I don't know about your history, but my history is a lot of people questioning and making you feel small, a lot of trauma, things like that. So it's really done wonders. I was in a D I'll be honest, before I started this journey, I was in a DB relationship. So I didn't have a whole lot of self-esteem. I didn't have, like, it's so funny to me because people think that I've always been this quote unquote powerhouse or whatever. And this is kind of what the space has afforded me, though. Like, I have started to build up my confidence. I've gotten to a place where I now don't look for men to validate me. I don't look for whatever else. I'm to a point where I've found my voice. And then I guess the other thing that I'm just enjoying the hell out of, is the exposure to other cultures and other places. We're so ethnocentric here. We're so in a bubble, and it's just so great to. I mean, I've always watched British television. I liken my humor so much more to the UK, and most of the people that I supremely vibe with are in the UK. But, like, I've also met a bunch of people I've worked now with, not for. Currently, I still get to say I do not get paid in Web3, which makes my opinion, I think, count more in a lot of ways, because there's nothing driving it. But I currently have the affiliate badge for Finance Labs in Dubai. I've learned a lot about the Muslim religion, and most people know, as Americans, that religion has a really bad rap. It has a lot of stigma to it.
Islam
So
is
learning,
fascinating, though. It really
yes,
is.
it is, and obviously it destigmatizes it, because knowledge is power, and but that's not the stuff you learn in the classroom. That's the stuff you learn from talking to real people. Um, and believe it or not, it's improved I have great vocabulary, to be honest, in the first place, but it's improved it more every day that I get up and I do my good morning tweet and I do my good night tweet. I have to figure out how to say all the shit that I want to say, because it's a lot, and it's usually either a fuck you or be better or let's all hold hands. And it needs to be in under X amount of characters, because I know I can go longer, but nobody's going to click on that shit. So writing succinctly, like, it's improved my writing as well.
Yeah,
And
that's
people,
cool.
I want to add one more. I want to add, I managing people, because managing spaces, as you know, people don't realize it's work. Finding a way to kindly interrupt somebody who's on a 40-hour tangent is work, and finding a way to do things that add levity and people can laugh while you're course correcting a motherfucker hard, that's work, and it's balance, but I enjoy that challenge. So there's a lot of things that are fulfilling, to be honest.
Yeah, that last point, it's like every once in a while, kindly, definitely, but every once in a while, just interrupting and being like, all right, we got to move on, because that was my part. Like, kindly, I was like patiently waiting, patiently waiting, patiently waiting. And actually, when Vittler started co-hosting, his patience is not as long as mine. So he'd be like, he'd either be in my DMs being like, what the fuck are you letting this man talk about? Or he'd be like, all right, all right, all right, you know, and let's move on. And then I'd be like, okay, we should really get to some more hands. So like the balance of being kind, but also being abrupt sometimes and moving on. It's a talent, you know. There was something else that really I wanted to touch on that you said that really made me happy. I'm so happy that like you feel like you're in your power. I feel very similar in that and Jazz says this all the time. One of our other team members who hosts. When I first came to Spaces, I started on Clubhouse, and then the group that I was on Clubhouse with, I maybe spoke once on Clubhouse. They moved over to Twitter Spaces. They're like, there's these things called Twitter Spaces. So we moved over there, and I started just hopping into Spaces after work. You know, because like Twitter for me before, I always had this Epiphany handle, but I didn't really use it. But Twitter for me before, I have a personal one, was just complaining to corporations about shitty service. So, which is very effective, FYI. But when I started building Epiphany up, like I would hop into these smaller spaces and hang out and thinking, oh, like that's the way to go. Of course, it's the bigger spaces if you don't want to get noticed. So I'd go into these smaller spaces and they'd be like, oh, come on up. And I'd end up having intimate conversations with people. That's how I met Jazz and a bunch of the people who are in this team and were in the previous project that I was in. But Jazz will tell you, like the first like 4 months, I barely spoke. Like I just felt like, you know, I'm 46, so a little bit, got a couple years on you, and I had like terrible imposter syndrome. Like I'm really too old for this. But I also had this thing where I was like, I don't think NFTs are going anywhere, and I want to be in them now instead of 5 years from now thinking I should have been in them. You know, so so yeah, I really feel like it's get the fact that I host Twitter Spaces is not something like I'm coming up on my year anniversary for hosting Twitter Solana Side Up is in 9 days. It wasn't called Solana Side Up. It was called There Are No Good Spaces. I'm Making Coffee. But yeah, if you told me before that I'd be hosting Twitter Spaces, I'd be here with you on YT. Because also the first time Vittler asked me to be on YT, I was like, all right, okay, cool, I'll do that. And like I had my hair was covering part of my face because I was uncomfortable with, you know, my physical form being on YT. I think I wore glasses like he did, and I just didn't feel comfortable with the glasses. And now it's like, you can see I have my cupboard open. I don't give a shit, apparently. And I'm hosting. So to hear that you've had a similar experience and it's given you like this power, this joy, this benefit is just like so cool. And I think like sharing that with people, especially with the women in the community, is so vital to our growth.
Yeah, I think that I think people think because I'm such a guy's guy, that I'm not necessarily about women. But I have a lot of women in this space that I think it's our job to look out for each other and to build each other up. And like I said, that's what's funny about how we met. It was me course correcting them because I was like, she's been sitting there with her hand up. Like I'm a huge proponent of fuck around and find out. But like it is weird. It's a culture shock. Like I said, being in Portland where it's so liberal and never experiencing that discrimination that I had heard about, and now being there, it just makes me sad when I see other women going at it, and especially they come for me hard. They really want to label me drama. They really want whatever. And in the humblest way possible, I would say to creators coming up, like, people will be jealous of you, and and I can say that because I have gotten DMs from people that I quote say, "I hate you because I want everything that you have." And the only pushback I could say was, that's not a me problem. That's a you problem. Like, you can open a space that says please hate Empress because I want everything that she has. And like, please, if that works for you, go do that. But you can't come into my DMs and make that a me problem. Like, it's not. And so I say that to women all the time. Like, you have to be careful and you have to be safe. And the other thing I'll say is, I hear I love you too often. And I always, like, anytime I hear a woman say it in a space, I want to shake her and be like, do you know you could be talking to an extreme predator? And what you said in your head was, I love you, man, you're cool, da 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 da. And that stalker's head, they heard, oh, we have a special bond, we have a relationship. And so I'm always like, don't say I love you in a space to a guy or anybody, honestly, because you never know. But I people, words have power and can endanger you. And so, like, I always tell that to people. Just, I'm like, don't, if you're a woman especially, don't say I love you. Don't do it.
Guilty. It's totally guilty. So I'm taking that on board for sure. I was gonna say something about something you just said. Oh my God, Empress, we're gonna need a whole other hour sometime because this has been so cool, and we only have 9 minutes left. But oh, I know what it was. Yeah, I feel very similar to you, and I think that's also why we kind of became Insta friends, because I don't really go for like, I'm a woman for women, because I feel like that's instant toxicity. Like every woman I see, especially in Twitter, who does that is like toxic AF, to be honest with you. Like I just don't do it. I really believe, I really and truly believe that women who know I'm for women, because I feel like I'm more of a guy's guy as well. But women who really, um, I do it in who I am every day. Like I'm for women in who I am every day. Like I'm not gonna like let somebody come for a woman on the timeline and in a way that's disrespectful or damaging or hurtful. You know, I will always I will always you know, say something. And but on the other side of that coin, if I feel like a woman's wrong, I'm not going to stand up for that woman. You know, I'm not going to stand up for toxic
Because
behavior
it's
just
about an
because you're a
individual.
woman. Huh?
Yeah. Because it's about an individual, and I'm definitely, and that's where there's a fine line, right? Because, like, you don't want woman on woman violence, but at the same time, if somebody's, I mean, you've seen me go after them, probably, you've probably seen my timeline. If somebody's walking around acting like an entitled bitch and slamming women across the board, and I'll use the word bitch because I reappropriate the same way that many people reappropriate other slurs, like, what bitch is mine to use, I'm a woman. And I'll say, if somebody's out there being a raging bitch towards everybody, I will course correct them just like I would a man. Like, they don't get a pass because they're a woman in the space, especially when they're tearing down other people, you know?
Yeah, yeah. I think my least favorite person has actually left. I think enough people uh, told her she was like not fun, a bitch, or just not. She wasn't adding anything. Like I don't need you to be positive all the time. Like I was a part of a yoga cult. I know toxic positivity. It's worse than negative. It's worse than any toxicity out there. So I don't need that. I don't need you to be like everything's gonna be all right. And no, we can all be like the world's a fucked up place, and but we exist here. That's fine. But um, I also don't need you to be out there slamming everybody and everything that they do and belittling everybody. Like that's not a thing for me. Um, so there was a particular person who said the same things that I just said, where it's like, I don't need to endorse a woman just because she's a woman if I think what she said is wrong. But the problem was that she thought every woman was wrong. So, like, you know, you make yourself a caricature of, you know, by doing that, like, because not everybody can be wrong, um, you know, or everybody's a little right, you know, some of the time.
Yeah. I mean, I think law of averages can go in somebody's favor, but again, that's why it's so important if you fuck up to like to me when I really fuck up, I kind of really want people to see it in big bold letters because I would rather be viewed as human versus intimidating and pretentious. You know, like
Yeah.
I want people to know that absolutely I am a flawed single parent of a 15-year-old just out here trying to live my best life and protect my energy. And while I will come hard for a motherfucker, I expect to be held to the same account, and I hold
Yeah.
myself to the same account.
100%. I don't think there's anything wrong with, I say this a lot. I don't think there's anything wrong with making mistakes. That's part of the human journey. It's how you recover from those mistakes. And I'm gonna post this. Reaper has this thing where he says he doesn't mind if you love him or you hate him, but he hates being ignored. So I'm giving him his moment in the sun with this. Um, so yeah, it's definitely in the recovery. Like there are people that I don't speak to at all, and this is real life. This isn't, Web3, and it's not because of the mistake they made, because people are like, V, people make mistakes. Yeah, people make mistakes, but the recovery, there was no recovery. You came at me and pretended like nothing happened, or you never apologized for that mistake, or you never showed me that there was any growth from that mistake. And that's why I cut you off, not because you made a mistake. So yeah, I think that's very important as well. I think I probably need to be better about it, but I think I'm pretty good. But okay, we got 4 minutes, Empress. What gems are you going to drop on us for the last 4 minutes? Like what do you think is like one of the most powerful lessons you've learned? It doesn't have to be in Web3, it doesn't have to be as a creator, in life in general.
I read a quote, and every day it pops into my mind, and the quote is it's by Hazlitt, and it is, "We are only not hypocrites in our sleep." And it floored me when I read it, and it has been permanently ingrained in my brain. Because not only is it a rendition of cover your ass, right? Because if you're going to go after somebody, you should make sure that you're not guilty of the same thing, right? And then when you're going after somebody, it should inspire some empathy in how you're doing it. Because I really, and people have said, why do you care if somebody hates you? Why do you care whatever else? Believe it or not, I figured out it's not because I care if they hate me. It's because I need to know the motivation. If it's because they had a rough childhood, if it's because they're jealous, if it's because whatever. If I know the motivation, then I can be at peace with that. I don't need to make them like me, whatever else. But for some reason, I have to know what gets them there. And all of that thought process stems from that one quote. And I'll say it one more time. We are only not hypocrites in our sleep, because it pretty much guides almost all my interactions throughout a day. And it's so strange to me that that short little thing has so much effect on me. And I know people are like, ew, quotes, but I'm serious. Like, write it down, let it sink in, and it just applies to a whole lot.
That's, I don't know if I spelled hypocrites right, but I've tried to, oh, wait, hold on. I've tried to put it up. Um,
In our
that's
sleep. In our
in
sleep.
our sleep.
Yep.
Let me do that again. Oh, great. We are only not hippo. Did I spell hypocrites right? I was worried about that. And yeah, no, I felt that in my chest when you said it the first time. So here it is for you again.
Yeah.
Correct. Um, yeah, that's deep. Like, I'm gonna think about that for a while. Hi, Risha. Um, so cool. Thank you so much for joining me today, Empress. I kind of feel like it was a blessing that the other two girls couldn't make it, because I really got to like have kind of a deeper understanding of who you are and where you come from. And I absolutely have to have you back soon. But this has been like so beautiful. Thank you so much.
totally worth getting up for. I really appreciate you. What a
Yay!
great conversation. I absolutely adore you. Yeah, no, thank you. This was lovely. So I might even make my son watch it at some point. So I appreciate you.
Ooh, that's amazing. Yeah, no, the replay will be up, well, instantly. Guys, remember to claim your views right now. Remember to subscribe to the channel if you haven't subscribed yet. Remember to subscribe to Empress's Twitter. Um, you can follow me if you'd like as well. Not that I care either way, but it's cool because I'm like 70 away from 3,000, which for some reason 3,000 feels like a big deal to me. So when I haven't really cared this whole time. Um, but guys, have a great rest of your day, and I will see you. We have a boys creator table tonight, round table tonight, and I'll see you then.